Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a great holiday season with family, without family. Just depends on.
Hopefully with horror movies.
Yeah, hopefully with horror movies. I've gone back and rewatched a few things. So as you can see, I'm starting to get a little bit of a beard, which is good.
Inspired by Santa Claus?
Exactly. So this is a special episode for us because we haven't done anything like this before. And I just want to say a few words, mostly for myself, although Mike might have some things to chime in on. So I want to clarify. So our premise for this is our top 25 favorites, our favorites, from the year 2000 to the current year. So this is not the best of the best, but this is our favorites. I think that's what we agreed on. And I mean, I wanted to start off the episode by saying there's way more than 25 great horror films in the last 24 years. So keep that in mind when you listen to the episode. And my approach was, I only chose movies, of course, that I've seen. I only chose films that I felt had an impact on me. And I did not choose anything from 2024 because I was trying to avoid recency bias, because probably a few films from 2024 would have made it on this list. So I tried to think back, not necessarily, oh, this was the best film of that year, but I remember watching this film and thinking this, or it had this impact on me, or...
You didn't do one per year, though, did you?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's spread out, but it's not one per year. No.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So just we thought we're a quarter way into the 21st century. So we're 25 years as we hit 2025. So we thought it'd be very appropriate to look at our top 25 horror films of the 21st century so far. So mine's very similar to yours. I only picked ones I've seen. I definitely picked ones that had an impact on me and that I like, not necessarily the best.
Yeah.
So some of these might seem questionable if you're only looking with a critical eye. And there's some critical darlings that did not make my list. So we'll see how that goes.
Totally.
And it was fun. I just went back and looked at top horror lists from every year, like 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. And like, oh yeah, this one and this one. And I was in grade 11 in the year 2000. And I wasn't even really into horror movies much at that point. So going through this list was kind of interesting, seeing like the really impactful films that kind of drew me into the genre. And that will become apparent once we start going through the list. So this should be kind of fun.
And I was 8 years into my teaching career in the year 2000, just to emphasize the generation gap here.
And you were into horror though before that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So I was a big film buff in high school, but I watched a lot of everything, and I wasn't necessarily drawn to horror, though I liked some horror films. But that was more later, as we'll get to.
I also wanted to emphasize, because I've said this before when we do our top 10s, I hate ranking. This was really challenging for me. When we do our top 10s at the end of a season or something, those always cause me consternation. So you have no idea how many times I moved things around, I added things to the list, took things off but shouldn't this film be on the list? And I was, self-doubting. So, I mean, I've got my list, I'm going to stick to it, but I spend a lot of time worrying about this list.
Yeah, so our top 10 episodes are usually about an hour. So we are cognizant of the fact that we're doing 25 films each. So I think our game plan is to fairly quickly run through the first 15. I might make a few comments, or Lee might make a few comments, and then we'll do a bit more in depth on the top 10. So if we talked about all these films in depth, we'd be here for 4 hours.
Totally.
And I think we're aiming for, less than 2.
And although Mike would listen to that episode, I wouldn't. So
yeah, fair enough.
Okay, so are we ready to go?
Yeah. Are we rock, paper, scissoring for old time's sake?
Sure, if you want.
Or are you going to be a gentleman? Let me go first.
I'll be a gentleman and let you go first.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. It's a new year. I'll turn over. It's almost a new year. I'll turn over a new leaf.
And I'm curious to see how much, usually we're trying to predict how much overlap we have in a single given year. So over 25 years, for fun, I guess I could just throw out a number. I'll guess 13.
Oh, no way. No,
you think more or less?
Less.
Okay, interesting.
I'd be surprised if we had 8.
I do think our entries into horror are very different in terms of the subgenre that drew you in and drew me in. So that might be reflected here. But you said 8?
I think 8.
Okay. Be fun just to see. All right. So my number 25 is Paranormal Activity from 2007. This is like after Blair Witch, one of the most influential, I think,
Fair.
found footage films. So I remember watching with my family, and I remember just being really drawn into it. And I don't know if it's a critical darling, but actually it has 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Paranormal Activity is my number 25.
My number 25 is Let the Right One In, the 2008 Swedish original,
Okay.
not
the remake. Fair enough.
Yeah, this one just, I went in totally blind. I had no idea. There's something about, if you've watched Northern European horror film, they're especially Swedish. This one was very bleak, and it just really, it had an impact on me when I saw it, partly because of the way the story is told, with two young people. I'm trying not to give anything away. I think
I've seen it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I just
for
mean-
the audience.
Yeah,
Yeah, fair. Yeah, that's true. We'll do no spoilers for this list.
I mean, if you don't know the premise, then you can go in and watch it. But yeah, there was a really good one. I really liked this one, and I just felt it had a really unique atmosphere, and it was a really unique take on. And several of mine are actually in this category where they were just a unique twist on the genre or the subgenre.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. 25. Let the right one in.
Nice one. All right, my number 24 is Train to Busan from 2016. This is South Korean horror. This is zombies, and this is a very wild ride. I've not seen it since 2016. I think I've only seen it once. This is one on my list I really want to go back and rewatch, but it's a super fun, adrenaline pumping zombie flick. So if you like South Korean horror or you like zombies, highly recommend Train to Busan.
Oh, I totally ruined it for me.
Is that your 24?
No, my 24 is The Collector from 2009. Kind of in that serial killer, subgenre. Not much to say about this one other than I just remember liking it when I saw it. I like some of the things they did with the film, and it stuck with me. So it ended up on the list.
I think you recommended that to me, and I don't know if I ever got around to seeing it.
Probably not.
Is there like a guy's head on the cover?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can picture it. I don't recall if I saw that one. 2009?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know you usually ignore my recommendations.
I do tend to ignore your recommendations, but okay. I should watch that one. All right, my number 23 matches my t-shirt.
Nice.
I'm guessing this is on your list at some point. This is Evil Dead from 2013. This was Fede Alvarez. And this one is just so fun, so over the top,
Totally.
wicked gore. Yeah. And just, I think, lived up to the spirit of the original Evil Dead, which is hard because that is like a cult classic. And we reviewed this, no? We did remake versus original. So if you want to go all the way back to season 2.
Is it 2? Yeah, it must be. Yeah.
Season 2, we do a comparison of this Evil Dead with the original. So that's my number 23, Evil Dead.
Nice. And I think it does show up somewhere on my list. 23, I'm at Final Destination from the year 2000.
Oh, wow.
There's a whole bunch of those sort of teen horror ones, some of them better than others. Like Urban Legend wasn't that good. But something about this one, the first one, I mean, I didn't watch the whole franchise. Not 7.
Okay.
I didn't go back and decide I was going to watch the whole franchise, but this one I really liked. I mean, it was fun. Some of the accidents in the film were fun, and I just liked the idea of the premise of the film of kind of trying to outrun death. It was kind of a fun idea. So
I think I've only seen the first one. Have you seen much of the franchise?
I've seen. I think somewhere on a list somewhere I read that 5 wasn't bad, so I haven't watched it in order,
Okay.
but I've cherry picked.
Maybe that's your
franchise
marathon
maybe.
for 2025.
Maybe we'll see.
Because there's a new one coming out this year, I believe.
Oh, is there? I didn't know that.
I think there's another
Okay.
Final Destination coming out in 2025, so maybe we can watch all of them.
Oh yeah, let's do
a
that. Yeah,
franchise
that'd be
review.
awesome.
Okay. So sorry, that was your
That was 23.
23. Okay. My 22 is one you and I saw in theaters together. This is You're Next from 2011. Just a really fun film with a really badass heroine.
Yes.
A bit of a home invasion style. And this one just really stuck with me. I've seen it a couple times. Good performances, some good, fun musical tracks, and I really liked You're Next. So
Yeah, that was a good one. Very good.
that's my number 22.
22 for me is also from the year 2000. It is The Cell with Vincent D'Onofrio and Jennifer.
Yeah,
J-Lo.
just squeaks
in.
timeline, yeah.
And this is Tarsum Singh. Is that the director's name?
think so, yeah.
for me, I've gone back and rewatched this, and there's things that don't hold up, but the thing that got this put on the list for me was the visuals. It is visually a stunning film.
This is true.
There's definitely one cast member that should not be there at all, and
Jennifer
I'm not
Lopez.
talking about J-Lo, although she was stretching credulity as a psychologist or something, because she was quite young at the time. But no, I'm thinking of
We did a review of this one, and I
did.
seem to recall we made fun of this person.
we
but
did.
I'm drawing a blank at the
Oh
moment.
shoot!
It's not Ben Affleck.
He was Brawl in Cell Block 99 or whatever, and he's done like Wedding Crashers and
Oh yeah.
shoot! I
Oh,
can't believe I
man.
can't think of his
It'll
name.
come to me
Yeah.
from Wedding Crashers.
Yeah. Anyway, he's terrible, and he's miscast in this role. Vince Vaughn.
Vince
Yes,
Vaughn.
thank you.
There we go.
Anyway, he's horrible. But the movie is, I think, I mean, like I say, there's things that are dated, and there's things that are like, oh, really? I can't believe that. But especially when you get into parts of the film where you're meant to be inside the bad guy's head, Vincent D'Onofrio's head. Outstanding. Like, just visually, it's a stunning film. And I regret that I never saw it in theaters. The only time I ever saw it was renting or,
Yeah, I didn't
streaming
catch
or
that one in
whatever.
theaters either. But you're right. That'd be a visually stunning one.
Yeah. So maybe they'll bring it out in IMAX.
They might.
There you go. Anyway, that was my number 22.
And we reviewed that season 3, season 4.
Maybe. Yeah, I think because we just had a free-for-all season. We didn't
Yeah.
have any.
So if you want to go back and hear a full review of The Cell,
Indeed.
it's in our backlog somewhere.
Indeed.
All right, my number 21, which you're going to roll your eyes at, but I don't care. I put this one on my list with pride. This is Piranha 3D from 2010. This movie is so much fun. You've not seen it?
I have not. I saw
Okay.
the original Piranha, but I haven't seen.
Okay, you got to watch the 3D. And the 3 double D is even better with Dustin Hoffman, or not Dustin Hoffman, David Hasselhoff. Slight difference in acting quality there between
Yeah,
Dustin Hoffman and David Hasselhoff. But this has Richard Dreyfuss, Ving Rhames, Christopher Lloyd, and it's just like an unapologetically over the top, crazy, zany, fun, self-aware, just romp with piranhas. It's a really fun movie. So it seems awkward to be on the top 25, but I must have watched this movie like 10 times and showed people to. I just find it really fun. So if you've not seen Piranha 3D,
There you go.
despite the title, if you just want like a fun, this is the ultimate like Friday night popcorn, get a bunch of friends together and just have a good time. So I highly recommend Piranha 3D. And it has a 74% critic rating. So just
Wow.
that gives my argument a little bit of weight.
Fair. Okay. I guess
Is that
I know,
your 21?
I guess I
Piranha?
know what I'm watching tonight.
That's right.
No, my 21 is Train to Busan.
Oh, nice.
And I had 2019, but I might be mistaken there. So it doesn't matter. It's late 2010s. And yeah, this was just a great film. Nice surprise. I mean, it certainly benefits from another film that's on my list in terms of the interaction with zombies, but does it in a completely different way, and it's fresh, and I really enjoyed this film. So 21 for me.
Is that our first crossover then?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Number
Train to
1. There
Busan.
you go.
All right. So my number 20, this is, I think, the oldest film on my list. And this is The Others from 2001.
That was a good one.
Starring Nicole Kidman. This one's cool. It's like a very slow burn. It's not gory. It's quite accessible. And there's a cool twist that would make Shyamalan envious, I think. So, yeah, The Other's really good. It's 84% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. And this one stuck with me. I've not seen it that many times, but it made a big impact. It's probably one of the first horror movies that kind of got me into the genre a bit in 2001. So, yeah, if you've not seen The Others, it's a good one.
That's Spanish, right?
No. There's another one that has a similar title that I think is Spanish. This one's...
Because I thought the director that did Marrowbone also did The Others.
You know what? Is there a Spanish version, or is this a remake of a Spanish?
Is this the one with?
It's Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, that's a Spanish production. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, interesting, but it's not Spanish.
It's not Spanish.
language.
No, it's not Spanish language, but it's a Spanish director, and it's the same guy. I
You're
think,
right.
that did
Yeah,
Marrowbone.
I have it here. Alejandro Amenabar.
Yeah.
Sounds very Spanish.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, I actually don't know if I realized that.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's a good pick. Not on my list,
No.
so that's a good one.
Good one.
I'm sorry I missed that one.
Yeah, but you've seen it.
I have seen it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Cool.
I think, maybe we saw it together. actually.
No, I saw that in like high school. Maybe we talked about it at some
Maybe.
point.
Okay.
Anyways,
Anyway.
yeah.
So my number 20 is The Witch from
Nice.
2015. This was, of course, a bit of a critical darling, but Anya Taylor-Joy was fantastic. Just a great story, great performances, and kind of gets under your skin a little bit when you watch it. I've seen it many times, but there's my number 20.
That's Robert Eggers' directorial debut
Indeed,
as well?
yes.
Quite the
Yeah.
debut. Very nice. All right, my number 19 is from 2005, and this is The Descent. A group of girls who go caving, spelunking. And the caving part alone is pretty
Yes.
horrific.
Yeah.
Like if you are claustrophobic, despite any horror content, just them being in these very tight spaces, like crawling around underground,
Yeah.
that gives me the willies. Like I would not spend my free time spelunking in tight spaces.
Not at all.
No. But then there's other horror content as well, which I won't spoil. But I think this is considered one of the better horror movies from this time period.
Yeah, I would agree.
We'll see if it's on your
Would
list
agree.
later, but
We
that's
will.
2005's The Descent.
And that was number 19.
Yep.
My number 19 is Midsommar.
Nice.
2019, I think, if I didn't mistake that one too. So this is Ari Aster's second film after Hereditary. Similar in some ways to Hereditary, but also very different. And one of the things I think we talked about when we reviewed this one is just that feeling of dread and the idea of a horror film being in bright sunlight.
Yes.
And lots of, bright costumes and all those kinds of things, but there's still this underlying feeling of dread. And I think one of the things that Aster does really well, that he did in Hereditary and he did in this one as well, is capture the dynamics of relationships.
For sure.
And the negative dynamics of relationships. So definitely worth a watch.
We did an episode on that in our special guest season. Josh came on to talk about that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Cool. Good pick. All right. My number 18 is also actually one that takes place during the daytime, but it's Dead Snow from 2009.
I remember that one. You recommended that to me.
Have you seen it?
I have seen it. I hate to admit that I liked it because when I saw the cover and when you recommended it to me, I'm like, oh, this is going to be terrible. But it was actually a pretty
It's
fun
so
film.
fun.
Yeah.
It's like I think a Norwegian film about a group of friends who go to a cabin and get ambushed by Nazi zombies. And it's as
crazy.
over the top as the premise would suggest.
Totally.
But it's really fun, a good time, pretty gory, but has a good sense of fun. So if you like zombie movies, Dead Snow is a fun one. So 2009.
I think what's becoming apparent to me through the list, and this is something that I think bears itself out, especially in a list like this, is that you lean a little more towards those real fun ones.
Yes.
And even though I enjoy those ones, those aren't the ones that kind of rise to the top for me.
Yeah. No, that's true, I think.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. So my number 18 is probably the most recent one on my list, and it's When Evil Lurks.
Nice.
2023. And again, like many of the films on my list, the reason this sticks with me is the freshness of the approach. The subject matter is not necessarily new, and they follow some of the tropes that you would expect. And then there's some nasty gore in this one. But yeah, it was just the idea that like it almost happens every year to us. Something comes out of the blue. It's like, did you know this was coming? Did you hear about this one?
That one came out like November.
Yeah,
like
it was totally
not
out
on
of
my
the blue.
radar at
Yeah.
all. It was so good. Yeah.
It was. So there's 18 for me.
Yeah. Spoilers. That one didn't make my list, but it was close. Like
Fair.
that was on the short list, and maybe over time it would. Okay. My number 17 is Split from 2016, directed by M. Night Shyamalan and starring James McAvoy and Anya Taylor-Joy. But James McAvoy makes this film. He is
100%.
so good. And I won't spoil, but this has some other interesting elements. But it's about a character with multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. And James McAvoy just makes this film. I know M. Night Shyamalan, he hit or miss, but I think this was a hit for him, unlike maybe Trap from this past year, which I doubt is on your list. Maybe it is. But yeah,
be.
that's Split from 2016.
Nice. My 17 is The Conjuring from 2014.
Nice.
And this one again, I mean, despite the lengthy franchise that this has become. Again, if you think back to, if you've seen this or you saw it in theaters, which I think I did at the time, it was after coming through the 2000s, arguably this was the beginning of sort of the new rise of horror films.
Definitely.
With Lee Whannell and James Wan. So that's part of the reason that it was on my list, because I think it holds a special place in terms of where horror has gone and the resurgence of horror film.
What's the year on that?
I have 2014.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think that did really kick off this like golden age of horror we've been enjoying.
I think so.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And that's my number 17.
Did you, I think everyone considers The Conjuring to be the pinnacle of that universe of films. Did you consider any of the other Conjuring universe films, Conjuring 2 or
No.
The Nun?
No, because I think the other ones do much of the same.
Yeah.
Just with, a different plot twist or a different house or a different this, but the general concept is the same. And so this one being new, and again, I keep using the term sort of fresh, I think that was what and it made it to the list for me.
Yeah. And there's another Conjuring film coming out in 2025.
I think so. Yeah.
You look really, I tell by your facial expression, you're really excited for that one.
Yeah, I am.
All right. So my number 16 is a vampire flick, 30 Days of Night from 2007, starring Josh Hartnett. And the premise here is it happens in Alaska when they don't have daylight for like 30 years. So it's a great time for vampires because they don't have to worry about sunlight.
It is.
This one's just fun. It actually was not reviewed super well. It only has a 51% critic score and a 56% audience score. But this one really stood out to me. I really enjoyed it at the time. And I've gone back and watched a couple times and enjoyed it. So I'm not sure where the criticism comes in. Maybe I need to watch it again, but I have a recollection of very much enjoying 30 Days of Night.
I mean, it didn't make it on my list, but I certainly considered it. And it was, I enjoyed this film a lot, and I've seen it several times.
I think we're both Josh Hartnett fans.
Maybe not so much after Trap, but in general.
I thought he was the one good part of that movie. Maybe it was Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, and I mean, he's done Penny Dreadful, which I thought he was really good in. And I also appreciate
The Faculty.
One of the things I like about his approach to his career is that he's backed off at times. Like he hasn't necessarily made a movie every year or every 2 years throughout his career. He started off, fairly consistently, and then he's had some time off in between. And I think he has a really healthy respect for the industry and also for his own career. It doesn't feel like he has to pump out movie after movie. Yeah. So I respect that from a work standpoint.
And I'm just throwing this off the top of my head, but I think it's probably one of the better vampire films from this time period.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I actually don't know if I've had any vampire ones yet on my list. So anyways, there you
go. So we're at 16. I have Mandy from 2018 as my number 16. And again, seen this several times. We've reviewed it.
Nicolas Cage.
I mean, how could you go wrong? And is it Michelle Riseborough or Rossborough? I can't remember. I think it's Michelle. I've seen her in a film recently, actually, with Stellan Skarsgård. And I mean, performances are good. This is one of the films where Nicolas Cage can be completely over the top and also be within the bounds of his character.
It's so cool, that movie.
Yeah. It's really well done.
And we did a review of that one.
We did. Yeah.
That one just missed my list, and I was kind of sad about it. This is a hard list to make because you have to leave off a lot of good films.
I mean, I'm listening to some of the ones you've mentioned. I'm like, oh, why didn't I pick that one? Why didn't I pick that one? But, you kind of go through your head, what was your experience? And like, how many movies do I really love? Horror movies. That's why we do this podcast. So it's really hard to choose.
Definitely more than 25.
Definitely more than 25. So there you go. Mandy, 2018.
Very nice. All right. Good pick.
Very nice.
All right. My number 15 is one that you've already mentioned, and that is Midsommar from 2019.
That's number 2.
That's our second. Yeah. So big fan of Ari Aster. And I think, as you were saying, just having it take place all during the daytime. I think some influence from The Wicker Man with the kind of the cult horror aspects, and some interesting relationship dynamics in this one. And Florence Pugh is really good.
Yes.
I really enjoyed this one. I've seen it a few times now. And the way it uses gore in a limited but very impactful way is fun. So yeah, good pick. Midsommar,
Nice.
my number 15.
My number 15, I think maybe you haven't seen it, but maybe you have. It's Jennifer's Body from 2009.
Oh yeah, that's a good one with
Megan Fox.
yes.
And this one has had critical reevaluation in the last decade. I think it's Karen Kusama is the director. So when this came out, I think it was viewed by many critics as just your typical kind of teenage TNA with Megan Fox, teenage boy film kind of thing. There's a lot going on here. And I just really liked not only Megan Fox's performance, and I'm just trying to think of the other actress's name. She's been in lots of stuff. Anyway, I'm sorry that I don't remember. But I just love it. This is similar to another film that's in my top 10, actually, and I won't mention it, but I just really liked what they did with the idea of this film. And the fact that it's almost 10 years later than the other film that I'm thinking of, and because it's actually a much bigger budget.
Oh, I think I know what that one
They
might
were
be.
able to do lots of different things that they couldn't do in the other film. So this one just really stuck with me. And I think it's also, as I say, had a critical reevaluation in the last decade or so. And I think it's starting to be seen as more than people thought it was.
Well, this was sort of the first in that wave of like feminist horror
Yes.
films a bit. And I can't remember if this was pre or post kind of the Me Too, the Harvey Weinstein thing.
Oh, for sure, pre.
Okay. So it was almost kicking off that movement, but before, because after Me Too, there was a lot similar. So this one was one of the first ones, I think. Can I guess what your other one might be, or do you want me to keep it a complete surprise? I just have an idea, but I can hold off.
Yeah, hold off.
Okay. I'll make a mental note. Good one. Jennifer's Body. Okay. That was your 15?
15. Yep.
All right. Getting pretty high on the list now. My number 14 is from 2021 is The Sadness. So I have a lot of zombie films on my list, and I think zombies is what drew me into the horror genre.
Yeah.
It started with the Night of the Living Dead remake, the Tom Savini one, but then there was a lot of heavy hitters, which I'll get to. But The Sadness, we'd had a break from zombies for a while almost, and I felt like The Sadness kind of reinvigorated some interest in the zombies and did something different with them. So these are the most sadistic.
Oh, yeah.
Like take
brutal.
like all the worst elements of human nature and, blow them up to 11. And that's what you've got in these crazy zombies. So this is a Indonesian, Taiwanese.
I think Indonesian. Yeah.
Yeah. Indonesian horror film. Do not watch this with anyone who is squeamish. This is not for
not
the
at
faint
all.
of heart. The Sadness is very hardcore, but super good. And if you're a zombie fan, I think it's a must watch. Has a 91% critic score. So we'll see if it's on your list. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but The Sadness 2021.
Nice. I was just going to say, even though I think the other thing that I'm noticing, although there are a couple of zombie films on my list, that's not my favorite subgenre. So even though I loved that film when I saw it, it wasn't one that came to mind for this list, only because I'm like, oh yeah, it was good, but I like this one better, or, whatever. So I'm not as big a zombie fan as you are.
Yeah, you and I have similar tastes, kind of like critical tastes, yet we have, I think, subgenres we enjoy. So for me, it's definitely more zombies. So that's cool.
Number 14, also from 2009 for me, is The Craft.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
original one.
that's a good one.
Yeah, which
Actually,
I really
I didn't quite consider that, but I should have.
I enjoy that one quite a bit. I've watched it several times. I didn't especially enjoy the remake. I mean, it was okay, but it didn't stand up for me the way the original one did. I think the remake was made after the Me Too stuff started. Right. And so I think they were trying to fit in some things maybe that weren't in the original. Anyway, for whatever reason, I just think the cast really gelled for me, and I really liked the story.
It's Neve Campbell.
It is. She's in it. Yeah, for sure.
And the other girl's really good. The one who turns kind of
yes.
evil. I forgot her name, but she's really good.
I know she's got a very unique name. And I can't remember either. But Batima, or I can't remember. We're terrible. I'm a terrible reviewer. I should have all this information at my hands, but I don't. Anyway, that's The Craft, 2009, the original.
That's one I don't know if when I was going through all the lists that came across my path. But I loved that movie as a kid.
Me too. Yeah. I wasn't a kid, but
What year was that one?
2009.
Wow. My memory is that was earlier, but
Yeah, it's I think it feels earlier. Like
Yeah.
I think it maybe has a feel of maybe even early thousands or late 90s.
that's I think of it as a 90s film.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. All right.
I mean, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. You can look it up but I'm pretty sure I got the date right on that.
yeah, I'll look it up after.
Yeah.
I seem to have memories of watching that when I was younger, but that could be wrong. That's not the remake.
No.
The
No,
remake was a
original.
couple years ago. Like
It was only a
2021.
couple years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
was not good.
No.
Or it's not.
Eh.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, my number 13 is one that's been on a few lists of mine over the last few years. This is Be My Cat,
Nice.
a film for Anne, 2015. I just love this movie. Directed by Adrian Toffe. And of course, this is the real life, well, it seems like real life.
Real life.
Yeah. He's basically wants the real life Anne Hathaway to star in his movie.
Yes.
And so it's a found footage that feels so convincing and so real that I actually questioned whether the film I was watching was real. So
Yeah.
this guy's a genius. Won't say anything else about it. But if you've not seen Be My Cat, a film for Anne, I think it's good. And you were a bit dubious, I think, about it when I recommended it.
Absolutely.
And you would,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not in your top 10 of all time, but
It's not, but I was going to say we've done a review of this one, so go watch it. Because it was. It took me by surprise. It took me by surprise how good it was for a first-time director.
Yeah.
I think, and for such a low-budget film, how he gets around some of those constraints.
it's Romanian.
Romanian, yeah. I really like that one too.
All right.
Number 13, Afflicted. Now, this is 2012, and there are several movies, at least two that I can think of that have this title are in and around.
Is there
this
one like The Afflicted and Afflicted?
I think there's The Afflicted. There's Afflicted. I think there's two that have the title Afflicted,
Affliction.
but there's also The Afflicted.
Right.
But this is Afflicted 2012, and it's
found footage?
It's a found footage film. And the basic premise of the film is two guys going off to film their world travels, and something goes awry when they're traveling. And I really liked what this film did with a very common subgenre.
Yeah, I did actually watch. You recommended this to me like every
I know
30
and
times.
I don't think you ever
did
watched it until
eventually watch
Yeah.
it. So yeah,
Good for you.
yeah. That was your.
That was my number
13.
13.
Okay, my number 12. I think this might be on your list at some point. Drag Me to Hell from 2009. This is directed by Sam Raimi and starring Justin Long, who's amazing.
So good. Yeah.
This film is just, again, one of those, and maybe this is the difference between you and I, like just a really fun,
Totally.
like I've shown this to students. We brought this on a field trip and watched it, and they all loved it. Like it's not really even that edgy. Like it's not gory. It's not
really.
It's gross, but it's not inappropriate. Like I think it's rated PG-13 or PG. Like it's
Got to be close. Yeah. Maybe 14A.
it almost walks that line more than any film that I can think of, where it's like has a lot of impact and a lot of not gore, but it's like really, I don't know, it packs a punch, but not in a like Terrifier type
Exactly.
way. So
Yeah.
like you can almost show it to anybody, and it's got comedy, it's got some romance, it's got a little bit of everything. This is just a super fun movie. So I think many horror fans have seen it. Has a 92% critic score, which is really high.
It's really good.
But I love Drag Me to Hell. It's just so fun. So yeah, that's my number 12.
There you go. My number 12 is my second Ari Aster. It's Hereditary.
Sweet.
2018. Again, this was his directorial debut. Unbelievable performances, particularly from
Tony Collette.
Tony Collette. Thank you. But Gabriel Byrne is excellent as he is in everything I've ever seen him in. And again, just focusing on relationships, not only within the nuclear family, but also generationally. And just really does some interesting things that you don't expect. And there's definitely some shocker moments in the film. And I debated, this originally had started in my top 10, and eventually, that's why it's so close to the top 10, because I thought, oh, should I keep it? Should I not? So again, just
were you wary of recency bias, or just felt other things were better? Or
yeah, just I think part of it's recency, and part of it is just, okay, what was the impact And it could be that I've seen it too many times in the last few years.
Yeah.
And so that may take the edge off a little bit for me. Whereas some of the ones that I'm recalling,
Right.
maybe I've got a bit of nostalgia bias there where I'm like, oh yeah, that was really powerful. And maybe it wouldn't hit as hard now. So yeah, there's a number of factors. My number 11 is the same way.
It's interesting because of our age difference. Like the movies on my list are the ones that really like during those kind of formative years where movies can make like a really big impact. But for you, that was probably a bit earlier.
Yes.
So this list for you, like the films in the 2000s, like you would enjoy, but maybe you wouldn't have like hit you like in those teenage
Not the
years.
same way.
Where,
Yeah. So for me, it was things like The Exorcist,
Halloween.
right? Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, I was young in the 70s, but I saw a lot of those films towards the end of the 70s when I was early teens
Right.
and then into the 80s. And 80s, I mean, there's just a lot of dreck. I mean, there's a lot of slasher films. I mean, yeah, there's and we'll find out because we're going to be doing some 80s films coming up. But yeah, I just think the films that would have hit me the same way were, 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Number 11.
All right. My number 11 is Heretic. So I know I get your point about wanting to avoid recency bias, but I'm pretty confident that Heretic was strong enough that like years from now, it might even move up on my list. I think potentially I kept it out of my top 10, I think for that reason, but Hugh Grant was great. I love the religious theme here.
Yeah,
and
totally.
it was just very unique. It has a 93% critic score. I've already watched it a few times since it's come out. We did a review of this one only a few weeks ago. So yeah, this one's a bit of a questionable call because it only came out a few weeks ago and it's in my top 25, but I was pretty blown away by this.
I considered, I mean, even though I kind of made that rule for myself that I wouldn't do anything, it's like, this should be on my list. But I deliberately wanted to stick to my rule. But
Do you think it will make your list? Like if let's say we did this 5 years from now, do you think?
100%.
Okay.
There's several from this year that would probably make that list that would I didn't put it on now.
Yeah.
Substance might be on there.
Yeah.
Heretic for sure would be on there.
Yeah. So anyways, that's my my most recent one for sure, because it's like 3 weeks old. But
So we're getting close to
Heretic,
the
number
top
11.
10.
Yeah.
So my number 11 is Ty West's X 2022.
Oh, nice. I was curious if that was going to be.
Yeah. And again, this is
Not
one of
Pearl?
the ones, not Pearl, it's hard to believe, or Maxine. Yeah, this is one of the ones, it was in my top 10 and I kind of edged it out for a couple of other ones. Again, it was one of those ones that I've seen this probably 4 times in the last few years. I just keep coming back to it. And I just really, and again,
Do you like it more each time you watch it?
I would say, yeah.
I still feel like I've only seen it the one time in theaters.
Yeah, no, I've definitely gone back and rewatched it because, as I mentioned when we did our review of this, the Texas Chainsaw vibes of this one really hit strongly with me because Texas Chainsaw, the original, is such a strong film for me in terms of the history and my gateway into horror. Because I was about 13 or 14 when I saw Texas Chainsaw, and it blew me away. It scared me a lot, that one. And it doesn't scare me anymore. I just love the vibe of the film.
Yeah.
And so this one has that same vibe for me, and I really like that.
Do you think it's fair to say if my gateway into horror was zombies, your gateway into horror was more slasher films?
Yeah, for
'Cause you
sure.
like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween and
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think we come to horror from different places, but over time I've appreciated those ones more. So
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, it's what appeals to you. I mean, like I said, there is at least one zombie film on my list.
Oh, good.
So I'm not saying, and I mean, because we were limited, there would probably be other zombie films. There'd be Romero films on my list if this were from 1968 till
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
right? But that would be, I don't even want to think about making
And
that
zombies
list.
really dominated like the early 2000s. And I think that brought a lot of people into horror.
Yes.
And I would like to say I was a bit of a zombie fan before that from like the original like Resident Evil video games.
yeah, okay.
And I did really like the Night of the Living Dead remake.
Yeah.
And that was before zombies got popular. But I mean, some of the ones you're mentioning
Yeah.
make zombies like the horror thing in the early 2000s.
There you go.
Cool.
So I will insert a drum roll. This is our top 10.
Yeah, so now we're jumping into our top 10 of the last 25 years. My number 10 is also directed by Ty West,
Ooh.
but is not X. You could probably guess what it is.
Yes.
This is House of the Devil from 2009. This one's cool because though it's 2009, it's shot as if like you would think you were watching a film from like the 70s or the 80s. So that was cool. Like the aesthetic is really appealing to me. You and I have talked how much we love that 70s feel, which I think Ty West really captures. And it's just a bit of an atypical ride.
Yeah.
The way it's paced is kind of different. It builds a lot of tension, but it doesn't use the things that horror movies traditionally rely on. I don't want to spoil anything because but I think this is the movie that made me a Ty West fan, and he's just continued to show why he is such a good horror director. But yeah, I think if I had to choose my favorite Ty West film, it would be The House of the Devil, though X is also very good.
Yeah, it's a strong choice.
So we'll see if it makes your list as well. But yeah, really love House of the Devil. If you've not seen it, it's a must watch. And that's my number 10 from 2009.
Well, there you go. My number 10 is, I think, our third crossover.
Okay.
Evil Dead 2013.
Nice.
You've already talked about this. I preferred this. And again, this highlights the difference in our approach. Like, I liked the original, but I found it a bit goofy, at times, and too goofy for me. I appreciate it.
They're pretty goofy.
But this one was like, whoa. The gore is over the top. He's taken out the black humor and just replaced it with scares and grotesqueries. And that really appealed to me. Solid effects, good performances. This is one of the ones where I really love the fact that there was a reason for these 5 teens to be in the woods. It wasn't just, let's go vacation at a cabin in the woods. There was, sure, it might be a thin reason, but it was a decent reason for them to be there, right? It was detoxing.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. It's a perfect premise for why you'd want to go isolate out in the woods. Yeah, right? For sure. We saw this in theaters together, I think.
Yes, we did.
This was a good one to see in theaters.
Yes, it was really good.
Yeah.
And we saw the Evil Dead Rise in theaters too last spring.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway, I won't go on and on about this, but this has got, it doesn't have great 6.5 on IMDb. It's only got 63, 64 on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think though this is one that has aged more with like over time. Like I've heard people on horror podcasts speak more highly of it as time has gone. Yes. So I think it's one that maybe didn't get the credit it deserved at the time, but as people go back and mull it over, I think it gets better over time.
Yeah.
Also, I think it speaks to like how good Fede Alvarez is.
Yes.
Because he is very good at honing into what makes the original effective and kind of capitalizes on that. Yeah. So in this case, he uses like over the top gore and zaniness, which is what Evil Dead was about.
Yeah.
But when he redid Alien Romulus, it's not all about gore. Like he doesn't go back to the same playbook.
Yeah.
He's good at adapting to whatever source material he's working with and what made it special. So for Alien Romulus, he captures that like claustrophobia and the feel and the sci-fi and the survival horror. But in this one, it's the crazy gore. So,
and I think you have to admire his dedication to the source material, because I know with Alien, when he was doing that, I mean, he definitely, went to Ridley Scott and kind of got a blessing and so on, right? So he definitely wants the creators to feel that this is a worthy remake or addition to the franchise. And I think if more directors, rather than just jumping on and doing a franchise film or whatever, if they were more what am I trying to say? Conscious of the beginnings of the franchise or the feel of the original or whatever, then we'd have better horror films all the way around.
Mm-hmm. And I would be terrified to take on the Evil Dead franchise. Yeah. Like I think of Evil Dead as like the strongest cult following film in horror, almost like rabid Evil Dead fans are rabid fans. So like dipping your toe into that and knowing you could set yourself up for just like scathing criticism, the fact that he pulled it off.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't put myself in the Evil Dead crazy fanboy category, but I think he did a respectable job.
I think so. Yeah.
Nice. So that was your number 10?
That's my number 10.
All right. My number 9, I think this will be on your list. We'll see. Is It Follows from 2014. So this came up with a super unique premise. It's not a spoiler, is it? just the premise of the film.
I don't think so.
So that basically it's a demonic kind of possession based on sexually transmitted diseases. So I think the whole film is a bit of a metaphor for STDs, perhaps, but it's really well executed. It's super creepy. And the best part about it is this like demon thing just, it's not that fast, but it's very persistent.
Yes.
So even if you like fly halfway across the world, you know you'll be safe for some time, but this thing is eventually going to like find you and get you. So it's really well executed. I think it's one of the best films of the 2010s. Obviously, one of the best films from the last 25 years. Has Micah Monroe, and it's just a fun watch, but it's also creepy. So It Follows from 2014.
Nice. Good one. Okay, so my number 9 is 28 Days Later, 2002. So this has got pretty high 87 and 85 for critic audience and 7.5. And this is after a mysterious incurable virus spreads throughout the UK. A handful of survivors try to find sanctuary. Now, this one, for me, the reason it's on my list, it got me right from the opening where Cillian Murphy, kind of wakes up. And then there's this bleakness and there's this bleak negativity that runs all the way through the film. And then there's the terrifying running zombies.
Yes.
Which I think, was this the first film that did that?
Because that I can think of.
And so for me, I mentioned earlier,
I think that's kind of what put it on the map.
I think so.
Yeah.
And if you look at subsequent zombie films, whether it's Hashtag Alive, The Saddening, Train to Busan, that quick zombie stuff is absolutely, I mean, it's bad enough when they're shuffling after you and there's that persistence that you mentioned where it's like, okay, you're safe for a time, but they're just going to keep coming. This one was like, okay, can you outrun them? And that idea was so well executed in this compared to something like World War Z with Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one, it just, the bleakness of the film and the twist on the genre really made this stand out for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot we're giving our synopsis here, so we're in the top 10.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
All right. So my number 8 is another pretty recent horror film, and this is Talk to Me from 2023, directed by Danny Philippou and Maiko Philippou, starring Ari McCarthy, but that doesn't sound correct.
I don't know.
Anyways, a group of teenagers discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, becoming hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. Has a 94% Rotten Tomatoes. And this was just, I remember saying it the year I saw it, the best theater experience. I had no idea. I did not watch a trailer. I knew it had buzz. And it was just an absolutely wild ride.
Totally.
I remember the girl next to me was like hiding under a blanket. People got out and left during a really graphic, gory scene.
That's so brutal, that scene.
And these directors, again, I think this was their debut.
I think so, yeah.
And it's crazy. Like, this one's just really fun.
Yeah.
I've shown some friends it since then, and they also really liked it. It's a fun one to show to people. So again, I don't want to spoil anything, but some of the gore in this is pretty shocking. And I think they're making a sequel.
Ooh, really?
Yes. I'd heard the directors were torn between whether they wanted to do a direct sequel with the same characters or take the concept and make it about different characters. But anyways, I think a sequel is coming at some
Interesting.
point. So my number 8 is Talk to Me from 2023.
And my number 8 is Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Oh, cool.
2016. This is a favorite of mine. I've seen it at least 5 times. There's something about this film. I think
Not The Corpse of Anna Fritz.
no.
Okay.
I
Sorry,
think
Jay.
because I have, like if I think back, I've always liked witch stories, and I've always liked lore, and this one incorporates a bunch of that stuff in a modern day context, and a father and son coroner team investigate the death of Jane Doe, who's got a unique backstory. This is super tense, good performances. Brian Cox is the lead in this one.
Yeah, he's always good.
And Emil Hirsch, I think, plays his son. Like I said, I mean, I love the atmosphere of this one, and the unraveling of the story is really gripping for me. And even though I know what's coming and I know where the scares are, I think they execute those well too. So yeah, this one was I just really enjoyed this one. And this one's got 90% critic score.
Yeah, that's very high.
Only 78 audience. but obviously the critics knew what was happening in the
Yeah.
film. And a decent 6.8. I mean, it's nothing crazy on IMDb, but
I might have to go back and watch that one. I liked it. Like I remember
yeah,
it didn't make an impact on me that would make me put it on a list like this, but clearly it did for you. And
It did,
it's
yeah.
very well reviewed. So maybe I'll have to go back and give
Yeah.
it another shot. Nice.
you go.
Good one. All right. So my number 7 is one that I would never have thought would make my top 10 list had I not gone back and watched it last year. So we did a whole franchise review of this.
Oh God.
And this is Saw from 2004.
Yeah, fair. The
And
first
I'd almost written off Saw as like, I did see it back in the day, but that's before I was really into horror and maybe I just thought it was too gory. But anyways, going back and doing the whole franchise review, I grew to appreciate Saw quite a bit. Directed by James Wan and starring Carrie Elways, Leigh Whannell, and Danny Glover. The synopsis is just, obviously, I don't need to read it, but people know, I think, the deal with Saw. But it holds up. And I think
It does. And it's a departure from, it is the best in the franchise by far,
Yeah.
in my eyes. And it's a legit great premise for a film.
I think that's what, because I kind of just in my mind put it in that like torture porn
Yes.
bucket and left
And
it
it's
there.
not.
And it's actually not that gory. It's a bit like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where like people think of
Yes.
it as like this really gory mess, and it's not.
When they lump it in with the franchise,
Exactly.
and it's not
Yeah.
like the rest of the franchise.
And when you consider the Saw franchise in totality, yeah, it's mostly just crazy torture porn,
Yeah.
though it's actually decent. But I think the first one is, as a thriller, really good.
Yes.
And it's well acted. There's some really good twists and turns, and it's pretty compelling and actually pretty accessible. Like I've shown that to people who are not horror fans and they enjoyed it.
Yep.
And it's not as torture porn as you might
No.
remember. So if you've not seen the first Saw, or if you just discounted the whole franchise because you think of it, it's just going to be torture porn, I would say it's not.
It's a good pick.
So Saw from 2004, one that did not make much of an impact for me at the time, but last year I was like, oh yeah,
Nice.
Saw's really good.
Where are we? In the 7, right?
That was my number 7. So yeah, for you, number 7.
7 is Ginger Snaps from 2000.
That was the one I was going to
Yeah.
guess. Okay.
So, two death-obsessed sisters, outcasts in their neighborhood, must deal with the tragic consequences when one of them is bitten by a werewolf.
I thought this would be on your list.
So, I mentioned earlier,
Canadian film, right?
Canadian.
Yeah.
So, not only is it a fresh take on the werewolf movie and it's Canadian, but I think it sets the stage for some of the feminist horror, if you want to call it that comes later. Things like
Definitely.
Jennifer's Body owe, I think, their existence to films like this because it opens the door for those stories to be told. And I'm that's all I'm going to say because I'm a man. So what do I know? But this was a great film. It's quirky, and the first time I saw it, it was like, I don't know. But then when subsequent viewings, it was like, they're really doing something interesting and different here. And the sister relationship is really good and really well done. So I think this is worth, this has got a 90 critic score,
That's good.
6.8 on IMDb. Again, only 78 on for the audience score, but it's really well done. I didn't see this in theaters, but I saw it close to its release date, and I think it's a transformation film that has heart as well.
I remember that this is one of the first films I feel like you ever recommended to me. It is good. I was not on my radar at the time. And I feel like werewolves have not fared super well during this time period. Like a lot of ghosts and demonic possession. And we got lots of zombies, some witches. Werewolf films haven't been great, but yeah, Ginger Snaps is probably one of the more notable ones.
Yeah.
I feel like there's been a few more werewolf films the last couple of years, but there's not, I don't think, have we had any werewolf films on our list so far? No. So that's a good pick. And that was the one I was going to say.
Yeah, I thought so.
But I know it's a special movie for you. So nice. Good one. And Canadian.
Indeed.
All right. So my number 6 getting pretty high on the list. This is one that you've mentioned already, but this is The Conjuring from I have 2013, we had 2014. Sometimes films are released at festivals, but then there's the main release. And anyways.
I noticed actually IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes don't always agree on the release date. So I just picked one.
Yeah. Anyways, it's close. So directed by James Wan, starring Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren work to help a family terrorized by a dark presence in their farmhouse. And yeah, I think you totally nailed it, that this really kicked off sort of like the golden age of horror. There's been so many good movies since this time. And I think knowing it has elements of realism to it as well.
Yeah.
The thing that really was creepy, like it was creepy when I watched it, but in the closing credits, they show the actual photographs and how much those mirror some of the scenes in the movie. It kind of gave me like chills and like, oh, that's kind of eerie how real some of the source material is for those ones. So I think The Conjuring is a really special film. It's well executed. It has moments of humor. It's very scary.
Yeah.
And it holds up pretty well. Like usually if people ask me like, oh, what's a horror movie that I should go and watch that's actually scary? Usually like The Conjuring is one of the ones I'll say, and it usually delivers. So
100%.
Yeah. Conjuring. Nice that we both had that on our list. So that's my number 6.
Now, is that 4 then? Or is that 3 still?
That might
Train
be
to
5
Busan.
now. Train to Busan, Midsummer, Conjuring.
Evil Dead.
Yeah.
That's 4.
Maybe 4.
Yeah. I think 4 so
4.
far.
Okay. Your 8's looking pretty good.
So
right now.
number 6 for me is the Spanish version of Wreck, 2007.
Oh, yeah.
So a television reporter and cameraman follow emergency workers into
Two zombie films in your top 10. Yeah.
Into a dark apartment building and are quickly locked inside with something terrifying. I really loved the realistic devolution of human behavior in this one. Like human beings locked into a building together and how the relationships change and how the niceties of society kind of quickly diminish.
Was that the first found footage zombie film as well?
I would guess maybe the first found footage zombie.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's some great framing in the film. I love how they get really close to the reporter. And then of course I won't spoil it, but there's a terrifying finale for me anyway. Again, 90% critic, 7.4 IMDb, and 82% audience. And I just think this is...
It's got some memorable scenes.
Yeah, I didn't like the English remake as much, but the Spanish one is bang on. I really like this one.
And you saw the Spanish one first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Nice one.
Number
There you go.
6.
You got some zombie love in your top 10.
There you go.
All right. So my number 5, you're probably going to roll your eyes and make fun of me for this one.
Never. I would never do that.
So this one is a bit of a cheat. I don't know if I've cheated before.
That's so shocking.
It's a video game. No, it's not. It's a TV series though. And it's Midnight Mass from 2021. I know. I just love this one too much. I had to give it a shout out. Directed by Mike.
It's not a movie.
It's not a movie. Directed by Mike Flanagan, starring Kate Seigel and Zach Gilford. An isolated island community experiences miraculous events and frightening omens after the arrival of a charismatic, mysterious young priest. I know that's a TV series and I shouldn't really be including this on the list, but I feel like for horror, it's one of the best things I've ever seen. Really deals with religious content a bit like Heretic does as well. I just think it's so fantastic. And I've shown it to so many people who are not horror fans and they also love it. It does fit into a certain subgenre, which I won't spoil here, but I think Midnight Mass is my favorite thing Mike Flanagan has done. And I think it's one of the best things for the last 25 years, but I realized that.
I mean, my only pushback on that, other than the fact that it's not a movie, is if you took some of these other films and gave them 10 hours of airtime, could they come up? I mean, not to take anything away from Mike Flanagan, because I'm a fan too, but maybe they could have come up with something equally engrossing. So that's, it's not so much that it's a TV show, it's the length of it that niggles me that you put it on the list, because it's not fair. It's not a fair comparison to a 2-hour film. It kind of cuts
both ways though, because sometimes it's a detractor, something being
100%.
longer, like it can make something worse. Like you might have a really punchy, snappy film that's 2 hours, but yet it can get watered down. Like
Absolutely.
I think a lot of TV series actually start good, but the duration is what kills it.
Yeah.
So that might be my one defense, but you're right. I mean, some of these directors have given 10 hours to develop their characters or tell their story. This is maybe not a fair question to ask, but if you could include a TV series, is there anything in the horror genre that you're like, oh, that would probably have made my list?
It would be Mike Flanagan, 100%. I don't know if I would do Fall of the House of Usher, which I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
Or if it would be Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
Because I liked both of those better than, although to be fair, it's on my list to rewatch because I'm not sure I gave it a fair shake. I think the haunted house venue, I think coming from Hill House to that one was a bit of a come down for me.
Yeah.
Because I loved Hill House so much. And I think I unfairly or watched it with some bias there.
Right. Yeah.
So it is something I want to go back and rewatch. If for nothing else, that while it might not be as strong for me as Usher or Hill House, it's still some of the best TV in my mind out there.
I think my other defense is that I've seen many, many horror series, and most of those series would not rank higher than a lot of these films. So though the many directors have had the opportunity to tell horror stories over 10 episodes, I don't think that always makes it better than films. But just when I think back on like what in the horror genre impacted me from the last 25 years in like a very profound, significant way, I'm like Midnight Mass is on there. So I cheat, but
whatever lets you sleep at night.
Thank you. I'll acknowledge it's a cheat. That's my number 5.
Number 5. Number 5 for me is Sinister 2012. So this was not super well critically reviewed. It's got 6.8, but 63 and 62.
Is that it?
Yeah, on Rotten
That's
Tomatoes.
a travesty.
So a controversial true crime writer finds a box of Super 8 home movies revealing the work of an unknown serial killer. And so this has got really strong performance as a lead, a super high creep level, some great jump scares. And even on haven't recaptured my first viewing of this one, but it still packs a punch for me. And
Ethan Hawke's so good.
Yeah. And I've rewatched this many times. And again, for me, this is an atmosphere one too, because I love the idea of a writer investigating things and then coming up with mysteries and challenges that's also impacting them in their personal lives. I think it's a really compelling story for me. So this one, and I remember, again, is one of those ones that the impact for me, I can't remember if I saw this in theaters. I don't think so. I think I saw it streaming or something first, but it really threw me for a loop the first time I saw it.
I feel like I watched this with my whole family like Christmas Eve or something.
That would be an interesting one. So that's my number 6, or number 5, sorry.
And we did a review of that, I think season 5.
Yes, I think so.
So if you want to hear a full review of Sinister,
there you go.
We did it. Nice one. That's a good pick. All right, my number 4, this is another crossover with you. This is 28 Days Later from 2002.
Fifth crossover.
Directed by Danny Boyle, starring Cillian Murphy. And yeah, I was already a zombie fan, but this really dragged me into the zombie genre and just made me love zombie films.
Dragged you to hell?
Yeah, that's right. Dragged me down to hell. I think to your point, the bleakness of it has a really good soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like I've listened to like the 28 Days Later soundtrack. It's got some really good music. The thing I love about zombies, and the thing that drew me in, is that I love that they're in the background and it really kind of puts focus on human relationships. Yeah. So you have some really strong characters. And I love that thing of like, when the world goes to hell, how are people going to act? Are you going to help out your fellow man, or are you going to like look out for number one? And this has characters that take both paths. And I like that often, like the biggest villains in zombie films are not the zombies, but actually other characters. Whereas like in vampire films or werewolf films or monster films, like usually you've got all the humans who are mostly good and you've got the evil thing. So that really drew me to zombies. And I think 28 Days Later just executes that perfectly. Yeah. And cool that like Danny Boyle isn't really a horror director.
No.
And he won an Oscar for like $1 Million Baby. Is that right?
No, that's Clint Eastwood.
Oh, no. What's the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire one?
I'm drawing a blank. Sorry.
Okay. Anyways, he won an Oscar for a non-horror film.
Yeah.
Although I love Shallow Grave.
Yeah.
Which I almost put it on the list, and I thought, I don't know if it's horror. It's maybe more psychological thriller. Would you say Shallow Grave is a horror film? Yeah,
that's a tough call.
It's got like...
It's on the edge.
It gets edgy. That would be on my top 10 if it was, but I figured it didn't quite fit. But 20 Days Later, very special film. And again, 2025, we've got 28 Years Later coming out.
Yes, I saw that.
So I'm pretty excited for that. And I think it's Danny Boyle as well.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
And 28 Weeks Later has Robert Carlyle.
Yes.
I remember liking it, not as much as 28 Days.
Not as strong as the first one for me.
And then just, the running zombies are just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
20 Days Later, another overlap for us. That's my number 4.
So we've got 5 overlaps so far.
That's right. It's looking good for your 8.
So our 6th overlap is Talk to Me. That's my number 4.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's high.
So it was 94% Rotten Tomatoes for critics and 7.1 IMDb. Again, everything that Mike, there was one scene in there that just had me thrown back in my seat, especially a couple of years after seeing Hereditary, where there's a similar scene, but this takes it to the nth degree. And there's something
people walked out.
Yes.
When I was there.
Yeah. It's just a great film, great premise. I think, the something that's striking me as we're talking about how many or how often debut films are so strong for directors, because I think they bring an energy and an enthusiasm to their first project, sometimes that transcends things later, because they're not jaded by the industry. They're not hamstrung by having to do things a certain way.
It might be something too they've mulled over for a long time, and like they've been thinking about this idea, and then they got to okay, now I got to come up with a second film, but it didn't have the same.
It's kind of like the same thing. They often talk about this with sort of I think it's called your sophomore album. If you put out, for those of you who may not understand my lingo there, an album is a disc of vinyl that is meant to be played in order. And you don't just pick and choose songs. Anyway, I'm digressing. So I think it's the same thing with a sophomore album, where a lot of times artists come out with this banger first one, and then there's this real pressure to create a second one. And
usually not as good.
And I think directors fall into that same category, right?
So we had Hereditary, The Witch, this one, Be My Cat. We've had quite a few debut. Yeah.
So there you go. Number 4, our top 3.
Sweet. All right.
So that's 6 now we've got.
Yeah. It's actually 7, because my number 3, you just talked about, Sinister from 2012. Nice. Starring Ethan Hawke, who was so good in this one. You've already talked about the premise, but also mentioning this was scientifically proven to be the scariest horror film of all time. They subjected subjects to all these horror films and hooked them up to heart rate monitors. And this one topped it. That one jump scare, which is probably one of the most famous jump scares of all time, got people's heart rate up to 110 beats per minute or something. This one just has it all, kind of. As you say, the atmosphere is good. Yeah. The performances are good. The acting is good. It has jump scares. It has dread. It has a twist. It has a really good final act and ending of the movie. We did a whole review on this, and we both really liked it, obviously, because it's both in our top 10s. Yeah. But I think Sinister is a very special film. Unfortunately, the sequel is not good. But if you've not seen Sinister from 2012, it is a must-watch.
Highly recommended.
And I think speaks volumes that it's on both of our top 10 lists.
Indeed.
And that's our 7th crossover.
Yes, it is.
Okay, your number 8 is looking real good.
My number 3 is The Wailing from 2016.
Wow, that is so high. That surprises me a little bit. I knew you liked it.
Critics score 99%.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So soon after a stranger arrives in a little village, a mysterious sickness starts spreading. A policeman drawn into the incident is forced to solve the mystery in order to save his daughter. Again, if you've watched any of our episodes, my big critique often is length of film. And this one goes against my critique.
That's kind of ironic.
2 hours and 40 minutes or something. It's really long. But there's enough in it. It's almost like multiple little vignettes of movies within the arc of the story. And it's just really a really compelling story.
The pacing of South Korean horror is so different.
Totally.
It doesn't follow that main Hollywood arc. So maybe it makes it more engaging because you're not predicting that same pattern.
And even for the length of this film, I've gone back and rewatched it. And there's just something about this film that really grabbed me. Again, I think it's the storytelling.
We watched this together.
Yeah. It's that ghost ancestor stuff that comes up in a lot of Asian horror film that I find really compelling. And I just think it's a really fantastic film. It wasn't strong enough for me to knock out my second and first choice.
Yeah.
But again, I mentioned it off the top, it was really hard to decide where I was going to put this. It was lower down on the list. And then I started thinking about, okay, but what about this? And what about this? And there you go. There's my number 3.
Yeah. Nothing on your list so far has really surprised me.
But
that one surprises me. It wouldn't just surprise me if it was like lower on your list, but number 3, I would not have seen coming.
I think you'll be surprised at my number 1.
Yeah, it might be. I don't have any predictions at this point,
Yeah.
but I mean, The Wailing was really good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it made that like emotional impact on me where I'm like, oh, that was like a special film, but the 99% critical reception makes sense. Like it's very well executed.
Yeah.
It was a good one. Have you watched it since the first viewing?
Yeah.
Have you gone back and watched it?
Yeah.
I think because it's almost 3 hours, I've been like hesitant to go back.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
It.
It's like, okay, I'm in for a bit of a marathon.
Like Train to Busan, I know I'm going to get like the action and adrenaline to keep me going through it, but Wailing was a bit slower paced, but really good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so something like Train to Busan or The Saddening, it's like quick cut, super action packed, and it's like it's compelling. It keeps you going. This one, you've got to really invest in the story. And yeah, I just think it's really solid storytelling. And it obviously had an impact on me.
Yeah,
there
cool.
You go.
You got me thinking now what your number 1's going to be. I maybe have an inkling, but we'll see. All right. So my number 2 is Dawn of the Dead, the remake from 2004 by Zack Snyder. I think 28 Days Later was impactful, but I just loved this movie so much. As a zombie fan, I think 28 Days Later kind of whet my appetite. It was the original, well, not the original, it was the Night of the Living Dead remake that got me into zombies. I loved Resident Evil. I loved all the zombie things. And so when Dawn of the Dead came out, it was just so fun. You've got like Sarah Polley and Ving Rhames and Mekhi Phifer and Jake Weber. And it's the mall, but it's just very well paced.
It's good.
It has a lot of humor. It's quite fun. Like you can show this movie to almost anybody and it's pretty appealing. The zombies run unlike the other ones, so that makes them extra creepy. And I just love the interplay between the different characters. Again, you have that classic, are people going to look out for other people or are they going to look out for themselves? You actually have some pretty dynamic characters too.
Yes.
Because you have characters who start off kind of villainous and evolve to become more altruistic. And for this one, it's definitely when I watched it in my life and the impact. I don't know if many people would rank this this highly, but for me, this movie just like pulled me right into the horror genre. Like more than any movie I saw, I think Dawn of the Dead of 2004 made me like a loud and proud horror fan.
Nice.
So love Dawn of the Dead. You like this one, right? We reviewed this, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I liked it. Just again, like The Wailing didn't have that impact on me, but I totally appreciate this pick. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So there we go. That's my number 2. Your number 2.
My number 2 is The Descent from 2005.
Okay, sweet. So that's crossover number 8.
8.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this one already showed up on your list. Again, I think the best horror, maybe this is going out on a limb, the best horror is not necessarily about the effects or the monster or whatever the thing that you're fighting is, but it's the human dynamics in the background or in the foreground, depending on what's happening. And this one I really loved because of the betrayal and the revenge and those thin bonds of friendship that fracture over the course of the film. And I'm more than a little bit claustrophobic. This film terrifies me. And I actually recently, within the last week, have rewatched it.
Oh, you watched it this week?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. See, I haven't seen this one in a while.
And it stands up for me. It's not just the creatures that we're introduced to in the film, but it is more about the claustrophobia. Yeah, it's absolutely, it gives me the willies just thinking about it.
I seem to recall, I think there's 2 versions.
There's 2 endings.
Because there's 2 different endings, and one is bleaker than the other.
So there's a UK release, that's the bleak one.
Yeah.
And there's an American release, which is different. And I watched the UK one.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't remember which one I saw first.
I think I saw the more tame one first.
Because I like the UK ending better.
That's the bleak one.
That's the bleak one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, this is already, well, I don't know if the torture porn era had quite hit yet at 2005. It was
so that was 2004.
Yeah. So but I think that was late aughts.
Yes.
07, 08, 09.
Hostel was later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one is just really well done. It starts off with a bang, and then you come down a little bit, and then it progresses from there. But it's just I think
this was very widely regarded. Like, I think if you took, I don't know, 100 horror podcasters and they had to make this list, it would probably make a lot of people's near the top.
I think so.
Just when I talk to other horror fans, everyone's like, yeah, The Descent, I think, is just very widely regarded. Yeah. It's really good. And it is. That's cool. You watch it this week. I should go back and watch it. Actually, making this list is maybe want to go back and rewatch.
I know.
A lot of films I've not seen in like 20 years in some cases. Do you want to predict my number one? I have an inkling what your number one might be, but
I honestly don't have a clue what your number, because I just don't have a clue.
Okay. So my number one is a crossover, and it is Hereditary.
I was going to say Ari Aster, but I should have known.
Yeah. So directed by Ari Aster, you've already talked about it. Toni Collette is amazing. She was absolutely robbed. Should have gotten an Oscar for this. She is incredible. I think you already talked about the premise, but yeah, this movie just, I think it's doing something very different for horror. I think Ari Aster just uses overwhelming dread.
Yeah.
He doesn't really rely on jump scares. He doesn't rely on gore. He doesn't rely on like tension and fear. He relies on just brutal darkness.
Yes.
And there are some creepy moments, and there is, I don't know if there's jump scares though, really. I think that's kind of what makes it effective.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a jump scare, but there's the one scene when he's driving home.
That's right.
That's not really a jump scare, but it's like, oh my God, what did he just do?
Yeah, this has got some twists and turns. And I think actually what he does that's unique is he puts creepy things in the frame.
Yes.
But kind of hidden. So it's almost like the antithesis of a jump scare. Yeah. So he's not
You got to look for it.
Yeah, but then when you notice it, it's like, oh. Yeah. And like a jump scare makes you like jump. But that when you see something in the background that you didn't notice at first gives you like the chills down the spine. And I think that's because by 2018, I was pretty desensitized. I'd watched a lot of horror movies, and the thrill you get when you first start watching horror does sadly eventually kind of go away as you get desensitized. But I remember seeing this in theaters and getting chills like multiple times. And that rarely happens to me. And I think that's kind of why it stood out. And I've shown it to a few people, and I was a bit surprised that this was my number one. I wasn't sure that would be the case at the beginning, but I really like Hereditary, and I'm pretty excited to see Ari Aster has another film coming out this year, I think. I don't know if it'll top Hereditary, but.
So do you want to predict my number one?
I do. So I think it's going to be J-horror, because I know you really like the J-horrors, and I think this was like Ringu or what's the other one? The Grudge. Yeah. I'm thinking it's something like that or Audition, but I don't know. I might be wrong, but I'm going to guess it's maybe a J-horror.
That would have been a really good guess.
But I'm wrong.
I surprised myself.
Because you don't have any J-horrors on your list.
I know.
And you always speak so highly, and it's this time period.
I know. I don't know. I can't tell you. Like I say, this was so hard for me to do, and I hated.
Were they on your short list? Like I thought, if I could have bet, I would have bet my house that you would have had some of those early 2000 J-horrors on your list.
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Well, I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, you are wrong.
Okay.
And
Piranha 3 Double D?
No, but it's going to totally surprise you because it is an antithesis to what I've talked about already. My number one is from 2011, and it is Cabin in the Woods.
Okay, I can kind of see that.
And okay, so I'm not a big horror comedy fan because it's so hard to do well.
You're number one. Yeah, okay.
But I absolutely adored this film when I watched it the first time because it has everything. It's meta. It goes bonkers at the end. It has great comedy. It plays with all the tropes that you expect it's going to play with, kind of like a Scream, but the Evil Dead version of Scream, which is totally meta. Really good sort of, nod, wink, wink performances from some of the characters. I love the premise, of this kind of Big Brother idea. I'll read the synopsis.
That is shocking, actually.
I know. I shocked myself.
Because it is kind of a comedy.
It is.
It's more in the fun category.
It's more in the fun category. Yeah. So a group of kids go to a remote cabin in the woods where their fate is unknowingly controlled by technicians as part of a worldwide conspiracy where all horror movie cliches are revealed to be part of an elaborate sacrifice ritual. It was just for me, I had so much fun with this film. And even though I like to be scared and I love horror movies, it's the cleverness I think that's what appeals to me the most. Is it just plays with all the tropes, it plays with all the cliches, and I loved how much fun they were having with it, because then as a horror movie fan, I got to have that much fun with it too.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were talking about with Drag Me to Hell.
For sure. Yeah.
It's that, but notched up.
And Drag Me to Hell wasn't on your list, right?
It wasn't.
No.
Even though, I absolutely love it, and I've seen it many times. And it was just one of those ones where it was on my list and it started creeping up, and then I thought, yeah, but I had so much fun with that, and I really love this and I really love that. And I just thought, what the hell? I'll just put it on my number one.
Cool. Yeah. So when I looked at lists, like Cabin in the Woods, I think would be on a lot of people's. Like at the time, I remember people going crazy for Cabin.
It's
in the
92
Woods.
critic.
Yeah, and I think the difference for me is because it didn't even make my top.
No,
and
didn't make it anywhere.
No, but I think because it is a meta film,
right?
So I think if you're a big horror fan, so much of it is predicated on knowing the genre
Absolutely.
really well.
Yeah.
And when I saw this, and what was the year 2011?
Yeah,
I was into zombies, but I hadn't yet gone full really into horror. So a lot of my horror love and going back and watching all those films kind of happened after that.
Right.
So I think a lot of the cliches and a lot of the references probably went over my head, honestly.
Right.
So I think if I watch Cabin in the Woods now, I'd probably appreciate it way more than I did in 2011. I remember seeing it in theaters. I remember it being kind of fun, but I also remember being a bit baffled by the end. I'm like, oh, that's so weird.
Yeah.
So I would actually like to go back and watch it now. And I think I might have that same reverence for it.
Right.
Because do you think without that meta part, it is not as good?
I don't think so.
Like it's almost kind of goofy and weird.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous premise, right? But there's a great cameo by Sigourney Weaver at the end.
I don't remember that
of this, and the finale is completely over the top bonkers. Like it throws everything at you. Like I said, I kind of surprised myself, and I thought, this doesn't belong number one on this kind of list. And then I thought, I'm just going to keep it there.
That's cool. That's good. Number one.
Yeah. I just thought I'd dig my heels in and not second guess myself, because so many, and hearing your list, it's like, how did I miss that one? Or how did I miss the J horror? Because I've probably seen Ju-On and The Grudge, upwards of 5, 6, 7 times each.
And when I think of you, I think like you're always championing those.
Totally.
So it's, yeah.
And I seek those out.
Yeah, yeah. So was that a blind spot? Like, do you think if you could go back, did you forget about them, or did you actively consider those and be like, no, those don't make my list?
I think a blind spot.
Yeah.
I think, I think maybe even though, again, like you say, this totally fits into that early thousands. And that was, in hindsight, it's a bit ridiculous that I forgot those, because in my mind, that was the catalyst for the rejuvenation of horror films in North America.
Yeah.
Was the remakes of the Japanese ones.
Yeah.
Because, in those days, it was really hard to get a hold of a copy.
The Ring was like...
Totally.
Really, like that almost made my list.
It's just really interesting. But again, there's just so many good films.
There is, yeah. And everything on your list was good.
I just like, okay, well, what am I going to get rid of? And certainly it could have easily made the bottom 15.
Yeah. Ones I thought, did Devil's Rejects, did you consider?
Not really.
No.
As much as I enjoyed it, it was kind of like, I don't consider it in the same league as many of the films that we talked about.
Yeah, Strangers almost made my list. Trick or Treat, Behind the Mask, Leslie Vernon, and I like a lot. But
that was a really good one too, right?
Yeah. So it's hard making the list.
And no Creep on your list?
I know Creep I do like.
Yeah.
If you did a top 50, maybe it would make the list.
Is that in this? Oh, I guess it
is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, of course.
Now, so what was the Bone Collector?
Yeah, The Collector.
I think The Collector was the only one on your list that I hadn't seen. Was there any on my list you hadn't seen? Piranha?
Yeah, that one I haven't seen.
Maybe that's the only one.
I think that's the only one.
Okay. That's pretty good. So we've seen each other's lists.
And do we have 7 or 8 crossover? I think 7. I think
we'll have to go back and count.
Descent was the 7th. Because we had The Descent. We had Talk to Me.
Hereditary.
Sinister.
20 Days Later.
20 Days Later. Evil Dead.
Conjuring.
Conjuring.
That's 7.
I think that Hereditary.
Got that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe it's 7.
Yeah, I think it's 7. I was surprised you didn't put Mandy on your list too,
I almost made my list. It was like maybe.
because you enjoyed that film a lot.
Yeah. That was like my 30.
Now, did you not? You had Midsommar, right?
Yes.
As well as
oh, yeah.
Hereditary. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe is that 8?
I
I had no Nicolas Cage on my list, which is so sad.
Yeah, that's
I was
crazy.
actually going to make a joke. I forgot that my number 1 was going to be Wicker Man, which I almost put on the list just for the pure
Not the
entertainment value.
beast.
So that one almost should make the list. That's my honorable mention. My official honorable mention is the Wicker Man.
You know what
Nicolas
might
Cage.
be a fun thing to consider for the future, and I'm just throwing it out there, is the worst, comedically worst horror movie. Not like worst in the sense of they didn't come off. You know, they didn't do what they were
so bad they're funny.
Yeah, so bad they were funny. Kind of like The Room, but for horror films.
Yeah, like Troll 2 or there's a bunch of those. Yeah, that would be fun.
That would be a fun one.
Yeah. The best, worst movies.
Now, we're recording this at the end of December, but this is going to be released on January 1st. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And this is a bonus episode to start off season 7 for us. So are we going to reveal not the movies we're doing, but the premise?
Just the theme?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could make that official. We're doing a certain decade,
Indeed.
and we're going to go all the way back to the 1980s.
We've got some good films lined up.
Yeah, and I'm excited because I've mentioned before, I was born in 1983, so I wasn't watching any horror movies in the 1980s. And I've tried to go back and watch some. I've done a pretty good job, but there's so many horror movies in the 80s.
Yeah.
So for me, that's definitely my biggest blind spot of the decade. So there's like a lot of stuff from the 80s that I've not seen that I'm excited to see. So
Nice.
I think 80s should be pretty fun.
It will indeed be fun. All right. Well, there you go. So that starts off season 7 for us. I hope you enjoyed our list of 25. Do drop us a comment if you think we missed something like Ju-on, for example, or The Grudge, or if you have a favorite that we totally didn't even mention or talk about or anything else, and you think, how could you possibly miss that? This is the best film ever. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, as always, the algorithm likes it if you like and subscribe, so please do so. And if you have any comments other than about these films in the last 24, 25 years, drop us a comment and say something, because
Or give us your own list. Like if you want to put your 25 in,
Absolutely.
That'd be fun to see other people's lists.
Yeah, and if we do have some, we'll include those in upcoming episodes. So that's it.
That's it.
And
Happy New Year, and
We'll see you in the
aisles in 2025.